The process of archaeology never stops. Every day, somewhere in the world, there's a research team working on an exciting project, hoping to find something interesting. They don't succeed every day, but amazing discoveries still happen with surprising regularity. We're always interested in finding out what's turned up recently, and we're always excited to bring those discoveries to you in exciting videos like this one. Sit back and enjoy. May 2020 was a lucky month for Gordon Taylor, a history teacher from England. He finally cashed in on a collection of Anglo-Saxon treasure that he started digging up in a field in Lincolnshire in 1962 and sold them at auction for $50,000. It took Gordon more than 17 years to build up his collection, most of which dates back to the 5th century. Most of it is brooches, beads, tools, and spearheads, but the most surprising item in his collection was a human skull. The skull is something of a mystery, as it's far older than the other artifacts and belongs to someone who passed away around 1,000 years ago. It's thought that a museum placed the winning bid at the auction and was motivated by the presence of a collection of pendants that bear runic inscriptions from the early Teutonic alphabet. One of the sale conditions was that the items are to be kept together, so all 250 pieces are now expected to undergo further examination before being placed on public display later this year. Anything that dates back to the time of the Ming dynasty in China is always valuable, but the collection of treasure that was reported as found in May 2020 is especially valuable. It's made up of over 50,000 artifacts found at a site covering 15,000 square feet, close to a river that has been estimated to be worth at least $30 million. Experts believe that this is the long-lost treasure of Zhang Xianzhong, who led a revolt against the government of the time in 1644. His treasure is known to have been lost in a shipwreck along the river, and although the wreck itself has not yet been found, the presence of all this gold and jewelry suggests that the story is true. Aside from the ornate bracelets, earrings, brooches, and other decorative items, there are also old coins and solid gold and silver bars. Many archaeologists have spent years searching for this treasure without success, but now the long search is over. Hopefully, all of this treasure will soon be in a museum. All of us have heard of the legend of King Midas, who was said to be able to turn any object to gold just by touching it. But Midas was a real king who ruled Phrygia around 3,000 years ago. Now, here in 2020, evidence of his ultimate fate and final resting place may finally have been discovered in Turkey. A local farmer tipped authorities off about a stone bearing strange inscriptions half submerged in a canal in the Konya Plain, and that led to the excavation of what appears to be an ancient metropolis. The stone is especially significant because it records a victory over Phrygia by military forces belonging to King Hartapu, and the delivery of the opposing king to Hartapu himself. That king would have been Midas, and it's probably safe to assume that he didn't survive the encounter. Sadly, we still don't know much about King Hartapu other than the fact that he was a Hittite king. We don't even know the name of the kingdom over which he ruled. This discovery might be a step in the right direction when it comes to learning more. The Mayans were one of the ancient world's greatest and most mysterious civilizations. But where did their civilization begin? Historians believe that it might have been with King Kutzkuman, whose tomb was recently discovered in Retalhuela, Guatemala. The tomb dates back to around 700 BCE, making it the oldest royal Mayan burial ground ever discovered, and raised the possibility that Kutzkuman, who was also a priest, may have been their first ever leader. As is often the case with Mayan tombs, the grave is filled with jade goods, including figurines and bean-shaped shavings of the precious stone. Archaeologist Miguel Orrego, who headed up the excavation project, says that this king was the one who bridged the gap between the Olmec culture and the Mayan culture, starting the transition that eventually resulted in Mayan domination over this region. Under his rule, the Mayans began to build pyramids and seized control of former Olmec trade routes. The vulture's head pendant found with his remains is a symbolic grave offering that was traditionally buried with powerful men, but the creepy-looking ceramic dolls are of unknown purpose and harder to explain. Great archaeological discoveries have a happy habit of showing up during construction projects, and that was the case in Tomares, Spain, when a gargantuan collection of ancient Roman coins turned up during a routine pumping operation last year. The workers were attempting to fix leaking water pipes, but they uncovered a massive collection of bronze coins that weighs in at more than half a ton in the process. Ana Navarro, who runs the museum in nearby Seville, says that the enormous haul of 2,400-year-old coins is unique because they're in exceptional condition, suggesting that they were kept together and never entered general circulation. It's possible that they belonged to a bank or were held by a government agency to pay for soldiers or civil servants. Even with all her experience, she finds it difficult to give a cash value for a coin collection of this size, other than to say it's worth several $1,000,000. Some of the coins appear to have been bathed in silver to add to their value, and were probably grouped together like this immediately after they were minted. How they subsequently came to be forgotten and then buried is unknown. Our next discovery was considered so significant that the people who found it kept it secret for 2 years while they researched its history. It's a collection of gowns, stockings, and bodices recovered from a 17th century shipwreck close to the Dutch island of Texel. A leather book cover found within the same wreck bears the crest of the British Royal House of Stuart and offers a clue as to the garment's owner. She was Jean Kerr, the Countess of Roxburgh, and a lady-in-waiting to Queen Henrietta Maria, consort to King Charles I. More than that, she was a spy in the court of James I, working on behalf of the King of Spain. She wasn't on the ship when it went down, but it looks like she lost all of her most valuable clothes when the vessel was lost during a storm in February 1642. Fortunately, the chest containing the clothes ended up buried in a layer of sand on the seabed, which has protected them from erosion for the past 370 years. When German archaeologists found this next artifact in May 2020, it was covered in so much rust and concretions that it would have been easy to miss it entirely. It looked like it might be a rock or a lump of iron. In reality, once the rust was cleaned away, it was a beautiful silver dagger, still in its sheath, and decorated with red glass and enamel. It took 9 months to change the weapon from the condition it was found into the gleaming, polished museum piece it is today. The object shows signs of having been used in battle, and probably belonged to a Roman soldier. The Romans repeatedly battled Germanic tribes in this part of the world 2,000 years ago, and not always with great success. It would appear that the dagger's owner was on the losing side of his final battle, as his remains were found close to the weapon itself. Usually, a soldier would be buried with his weapons, so it's not clear why this dagger was instead found buried in the backfill of a nearby trench. That mystery aside, this is one of the best preserved Roman daggers of its era ever found. Archaeologists always get particularly excited when they find mountain tombs because the climate and environment of tall mountains offer excellent conditions for preserving whatever might be buried there. That certainly proved to be the case for this beautiful collection of gold jewelry, which was found in the Tarbagati Mountains of Kazakhstan in mid-2018. There are more than 3,000 pieces in the collection, which is approximately 2,800 years old. Identifying the owner of the jewelry has so far proven to be impossible, but they likely belonged to a significant person, perhaps even a king, of the nomadic Saka people who roamed across this part of Asia many centuries ago. The delicately carved earrings and gold plates are fascinating to look at, but experts have been especially impressed by the decorative gold beads, which have been made using micro-soldering skills that historians once believed were beyond the skills of people of this time. Excitingly, this might be the beginning of a much larger discovery, as archaeologists believe there may be up to 200 more tombs hidden in the mountains. We're stretching the definition of recent with this next discovery. But how could we not tell you about a shipwreck that contains treasure worth $17 billion? It's the most valuable undersea treasure ever found, and it turned up off the coast of Colombia in December 2015. The ship, which is 1,000 feet underwater in the Caribbean Sea, is the famous galleon San Jose. It was known to be full of silver, gold, pottery, and gemstones when a British warship sank it in 1708, and divers spent more than 3 centuries looking for it before it was finally discovered. There are more than 11 million gold coins aboard the sunken vessel. Surprisingly, it still hasn't been raised or recovered. That's because there's an ongoing legal battle about who gets to cash in on the find. The American team who found it wants a cut of the profits, but so does the Spanish government on account of the fact that it was their ship, and the Colombian government on account of the fact that it's been found in their waters. The dispute may continue for quite some time. If you know a thing or two about Vikings, you might have heard of the legendary King Harald Blatant Gormson, also known as Bluetooth. In September 2018, the king's lost treasure was discovered in Germany by a 13-year-old boy using a metal detector. The boy, named Luca, had only just switched his metal detector on when he found a single silver coin on the German island of Rügen on the Baltic Sea. That prompted a wider search of the area that led to the discovery of a further 600 coins, several jewelry items, and a Thor's hammer. Legend has it that when Bluetooth was deposed in Denmark toward the end of his life, he fled south to Pomerania, which would, at the time, have included Rügen. This discovery appears to confirm that story. It was a harsh way for the Danes to treat Bluetooth after he united the country during the 10th century and introducing Christianity to the country. But based on this find, we can at least rest assured that he appears to have lived out the remainder of his days in comfort. Bronze Age artifacts can be found all over Europe, but they turn up in Greece more often than they turn up anywhere else. In January 2019, a Bronze Age tomb with a difference was discovered in Pylos, one that dates all the way back to the dawn of European civilization 3,500 years ago. Based on the tomb's contents, it appears to be the final resting place of a mighty warrior. He was buried surrounded by his weapons, and a fine collection of jewelry worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's likely that he was a Mycenaean, the race that laid the cultural foundation stones for what would go on to be ancient Greece. The tomb is so large that the archaeologists who found it initially believed that they'd uncovered an old house, but as they kept digging, they eventually found a bronze shaft that led to a grave containing more than 1,000 artifacts alongside the remains of the warrior. Some of the grave goods appear to be Minoan instead of Mycenaean, suggesting that either they were stolen or that Minoan culture continued to influence the Mycenaeans even after they conquered the older race. When Derek McLennan discovered a 10th century hoard of Viking treasure in a field in western Scotland in 2014, he thought it was the luckiest day of his life, especially when the collection went on to be sold for $2.5 million. He felt less fortunate in September 2019, when the Church of Scotland announced it was suing him for a share of that money, on account of the fact that the treasure was found on their land, and he hadn't asked for permission to go digging in it. It's a good job he did go digging though, because if he hadn't, the collection now known as the Galloway Hoard might never have been found. It's considered to be the richest and most significant Viking discovery in British history, made up of bracelets, rings, brooches, and an early example of a Viking Christian cross made of enamel. Many of the items in the hoard come from different European countries, which might imply that this was a Viking warrior's personal treasure collection, gathered from ransacking and pillaging. The hoard appears to have been buried for safekeeping, but the owner never returned for it. The church claims that Derek went back on an agreement to donate a share of the profits to the church, and the matter is now headed for court. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!